Hi, Section 1. This is a recording for you for Monday, March 6th. I can't be in class today, but Lena is going to kind of do the things in class that we did in my class on Section 2 and on Thursday when I was able to be there. Today is Thursday, but this is for Monday. So you've had the quiz in class already, and we'll get those graded and back to you soon. But I wanted to start off with the first question from the quiz, which is, why is using a social relevance type of interpretation different from what you did in your close reading paper? And the end of chapter 9 actually gives a really good statement of how that's different. It's on 197, and it says, literary criticism no longer treats texts as isolated objects, but rather as parts of a network of social forces, and that there's a connection between literature and life. So if you'll remember, for the close reading paper, I tried to focus you don't give your opinion, you don't delve into the life of the author, you don't do any kind of outside research. And that was actually, close reading is the bedrock of literary studies, but that could have been called a new critical analysis of the paper, which is referred to on 196. Which just considers the words on the page. Nothing, no connection between the work of literature and the society in which it was written or the society where the reader finds themselves. So your literary theory paper, which is coming up, is going to be different because you can and you should consider how life, our society, or probably our society, connects with dream children. This is the last time you'll analyze dream children. To give you a very, very brief and rough overview, I've made a little drawing, which maybe I'll be able to edit into this video, but if not, Lena can put it up on the dot cam. It's going to look like this. Can you see it? Yeah. So it's going from literary critics only looking at the text to greater and greater numbers of people broadening out, so that over time literary critics over the 20th century especially have been concerned with how literature reflects or impacts first white men, and then white women, and then people of color, and then people who are not Americans. So larger and larger parts of society. So maybe I'll show you that in the video, or maybe Lena will just pause here and show you that dumb little handout I made. So considering that, the history of how literary studies has considered the relationship of literature and life to greater and greater numbers of people, I want you to look on page 194 and 195 in chapter 9 and see that in these bolded headings, there is an assumption that literature will reveal systemic problems of society, systematic social problems, or just revealing something about culture and society, and it's often revealing a problem in society, critiquing society based on what you see in literary text, and we'll practice that in just a little bit. But you might be able to tell from the handout of what literary critics and who literary critics have been concerned with over time, and the fact that this book says, studying literature using theoretical texts can uncover social problems. There is a progressive, liberal, these are very common assumptions in literary criticism, and you can probably see that in these two textbook chapters, 9 and 10. But I want you to know that you do not have to share these assumptions. And if you don't agree with, the political assumptions of progressivism and liberalism that, people of color, or basically people of minority groups or people other than white men, don't share power equally in society, which is just a major progressive assumption. You don't have to write your paper that way because you think that's what you have to say, or that's what I'm looking for you to say. You don't have to, persuade use politics to persuade me of that, from a progressive standpoint. So don't write that on my evaluation. You just need to have evidence for what you say, and you need to link the theoretical text you use to the literary text, which is portrayed very well, I think, on page 201 in your book. I love this drawing. I was trying to do this drawing on the board before I had this book, but they do it much better. Yeah, that one. The theoretical text that uses a lens to bring parts of the primary text into focus. Where is it? Don't worry about part 2, just part 1 is what we're concerned with, how the theoretical text brings certain parts of the literary text into or out of focus. So the visual metaphor that they have, and the verbal metaphor, is that your theoretical text is like a lens. It's like a magnifying glass or a microscope or any type of lens that is used to bring certain parts in its field into better focus, and so that means other parts will be blurrier or out of focus, or you won't even see them. They're not worth regarding when you have that particular type of lens. And you can change lenses. You can use different types of lenses on the same literary text, but different things will come into focus, be more important, be more prominent, and other things will recede into the background. So, an example that we can all work on together, that Lena will help facilitate on the board, is thinking back to a text that we are all familiar with, which is the Lumineers videos. So I'd like for you to think back to those. You'll watch them in a second, but just have, a general think back to when you were writing your summary paper, and especially the 3 videos that had narratives and had women as main characters. So you had Sleep on the Floor with that couple who were the main characters. You had Angela we can say Angela is the main character, and Cleopatra is the older woman who is driving the taxi. We can say that she's the main character. So thinking about those 3 videos, let's try thinking about how 2 different theoretical lenses will help us concentrate on different parts and different details of those 3 videos. So the first one I want you to think about and jot down a couple of ideas about is a psychological lens. So say you're writing a paper over these videos, which you're not, these are just practice, and you want to provide an interpretation that reveals the psychology of 1 or 2 or 3 of the main characters in the Lumineers videos. So what details will you focus on to interpret, to provide a psychological interpretation of these characters' actions, what they do in response to what happens to them? So that's maybe one column that you'll work on. What details will you pay attention to, will become more important? What details will be most prominent? And a psychological interpretation of the 3 Lumineers videos. So I'll stop there and let you think about that and work on that, and then I'll provide another type of lens for you to think about. All right, so hopefully you've talked about what things you would pay attention to in a psychological interpretation of the 3 Lumineers videos. Now, as a contrast to that, because some people will get it when you say you would pay attention to these group of details in a psychological criticism and these group of details in a Marxist criticism. So a Marxist criticism does not mean you have to be a Marxist to do it, or that it will necessarily result in that's what this text means, therefore capitalism is going to fall any day now. A Marxist criticism is just the name that we give to a reading that pays attention to things like labor and work, money, wealth, the financial situations of characters or of the settings. So if you think about those kinds of details, work and money and socioeconomic class of the characters, or what you can see in the background, then what kinds of details would you pay attention to or would be more important in those 3 videos, same 3 videos, if you were doing a Marxist criticism or using a Marxist lens to look at those 3 videos? So I'm going to let y'all have some time now to make some notes about that, and then we'll come back. Okay, now that you've done just some work from memory about those 3 videos, I want y'all to watch all 3 of them. So you are going to do a close reading. You're going to jot down details that you notice from the videos. This time I want you to use a feminist theoretical lens, particularly a term from feminist literary criticism of patriarchy or a patriarchal society. Lena's going to put that up on the projector for you to see, so you need to understand what that idea is first, so take a few minutes to look at it, and then watch the 3 videos, not Ophelia, but the other 3 Lumineers videos, and just make notes about this question. And I think Lena can write this on the board or the overhead or whatever. In those 3 Lumineers videos, is there evidence that the 3 main characters, the female characters, are they living in a patriarchal society or not? So is there evidence that they're living in a patriarchal society? Is there evidence that they're not living in a patriarchal society? You can probably come up with things for both columns, for both readings, because it's a complicated question, it's a complicated text. So when you're watching those videos, go ahead and make notes, and then at the end you'll have some time to write an interpretive argument that uses that theoretical concept of patriarchy and brings some details into focus from the videos and can provide a foundation for you to make an interpretive argument that uses a theoretical lens. So I'm going to let you work on that, and I'm going to give it over to Lena so she can show you what you've got coming up in the next couple weeks. I miss you, and I hope that I can see you soon. Okay, work hard.